Hello, Gen Genies. It's me, Julie.
And Rich.
Before we get started today, we want to let you in on some exciting news. We have launched our new Patreon page for the podcast.
Woohoo! We are super excited about this new chapter for CutOff Jeans.
So, Patreon is a website where listeners like you can pledge a small monthly amount. We're talking only $5 or $10, guys, to support the podcast and help defray the costs of bringing you the show each week.
To be clear, CutOff Jeans will continue to be absolutely free. But to thank you for your support, we are going to offer our patrons some fun little extras.
Like early access to the podcast every week, where you'll get to hear the latest episode before it's released to the general public.
And why not make your friends jealous with exclusive patron-only CutOff Jeans swag?
Fancy. And here's something you guys have been asking for, and I'm really looking forward to this. I'm going to host a monthly, hour-long, online Ask Me Anything session where patrons at the $10 level can literally ask me anything.
Anything? You're a brave woman, Julie.
You know, I know. I'm also going to give access to my blog, Are You My Father?, where I tell the story of my search, actually it's my life story basically, for my biological father in even more detail than I did on the podcast.
Wow, your blog was the original inspiration for CutOff Jeans, wasn't it?
It was.
Wow. Well, all patrons at any level will receive a shout-out on the podcast along with our undying gratitude for your support.
Yep. You guys know that this show is a labor of love for me. It's something I'm very passionate about. It'd mean so much to me if you would consider supporting our work here on the podcast by going to patreon.com/CutOff Jeans podcast.
That's Patreon, patreon.com/CutOff Jeans podcast.
We'll add a link to it on the podcast and on the Facebook page. Thank you all, my Gen Genies.
And now, on with the show.
Woo!
Is your family tree a mystery? Are you fascinated by genealogy? Well, hip, hip, hooray, let's talk DNA with Julie.
The truth is in your genes.
In CutOff Jeans.
Welcome to CutOff Jeans, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson, and I am a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
And I am Richard Castle, the co-host and producer of this lovely podcast. How are you, Julie?
I'm fine.
Julie, I want to start off today by giving a little shout out to some of our patrons, our newest patrons on our Patreon
we
page.
need to catch up on that, don't we?
Yes.
All right. So since last we did this, we've had a few new patrons. So I want to give them a shout out and thank them for supporting us, because it really helps us just cover the basic costs of this.
Exactly.
And we can keep doing it because of them. So thank you, Holly Grass. Our friend Drew Dalzell, who is my old friend, who I found his mother for him, and who he recently posted in the group, actually, pictures of him with his mother and sisters.
I saw that, yes.
Yeah, he flew to Montana and got to spend some time with them, and I'm so happy for him. Let's see, Michelle Pendress Carr, our friend Stacy Jaros, who was one of the first Epic Odysseys.
That's right.
Way back in one of the earlier episodes, Tiffany Willis, who's also been in Epic Odyssey, and our friend Tom Ginder.
We both know Tom from many years ago. We did a production of My Fair Lady at Golden West College in 19...
Yeah.
Anyway, I want to thank all of our current Patreon supporters and our future ones.
Yes. Thank you so much.
So, Julie, what's going on in the world of DNA?
Well, before we go to the world of DNA, I want to talk about, I've spent a lot of time at the DMV lately because my son is finally getting his license.
Yes.
And I decided that it's time for me to get my personalized license plates.
I love it.
What are they called?
Vanity plates.
Vanity plates. Because the last time I had vanity plates was back when you and I first met. Do you remember what my vanity plates were back then?
I don't. Remind me, though.
My daughter still has mine, and it's hilarious to think about. All right. So remember, I was a very young musical theater geek and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to take on the world. in Hollywood. And so I wanted my license on my, by the way, my car was my first car was a 1978 Toyota Corolla, and this was in 1984. So my license plate, I wanted it to be a star to be, or somehow, saying that I was going to be famous
Yes.
in some way. And of course, a star to be and to be a star were already taken. So I went with, and my justification for this was because of my accent, that I didn't pronounce my R's.
Because you are from Australia.
Yes, because it was to be a star, STAH.
Now I remember, because I was from Boston, and I would say things like, "You're a star, Julie."
Yeah. So, of course, inevitably, I realized, first of all, I would be at a stoplight and people would come up. I could see people in my rearview mirror that would stop behind me trying to figure out what it meant. And ultimately, most people thought it was Italian to stop, to basta. So, yeah, I got over that really fast. That was around the same time I stopped using a treble clef as the J in my signature.
Oh, my goodness. That is
right. So I had a bunch of ideas that I wanted, and I wanted it to be about my vocation now.
Yes.
So some of the choices I had were DNA tree was one, DNA PI was another. Let me see, what else? There was two others. One was Gen Genie.
Well, I mean, to me, that's...
I know.
Yeah, that's got to be it.
But it wasn't really that obvious. It was ultimately. Okay, I'm just going to go there. Gen Genie won, and it does make the most sense.
Well, I love it. I mean...
Some people liked, DNA Truth.
Yeah, oh, that's nice.
And a lot of people liked that as well. It's pretty much the core of who I am, is because I believe in the truth.
Did you check for CutOff genes?
Yeah, I'm sure I tried, but it had to be limited to 7 letters.
Right.
Or seven spaces. So, yeah, I'm sure I tried. I wanted to. There were others that I really wanted to do that would never have made any sense.
I love that you have Gen Genie.
So, yes, I went with Gen Genie, guys, and I will certainly take a picture of it and I'm going to be easily identifiable now because I'm so famous that it's going to be a problem.
I'm sure. You're going to have stalkers, right? My favorite vanity plate that I ever saw it said, "Betty, please." And I'll tell you why I thought that was so funny. It was because this is it's so specific, but there is an episode of Laverne and Shirley where Laverne and Shirley inherits a diner called Dead Laszlo's Place, and Laverne keeps getting on the little microphone, calling into the kitchen, and she goes, "Betty, please pick up, Betty, please," and she does it through the whole episode, and it's so hysterically funny. And I'm like, that person saw that episode and put "Betty, please" on their license plate.
Did you feel the need to pull up next to them and give them the thumbs up? Like, I get it.
I think we were on the freeway, and so it didn't. I didn't pull up next to them and try to scare them or anything like that. But I will say that when it's that specific, and they're doing it because they love it, and they know that there's probably 10 other people that will
and
ever.
You're like, I have to be friends with this person. See, I may stalk them.
But think about it. If someone saw Gen Genie, they would know, and they were a listener. They would go, "Oh my God, that must be Julie."
And they would follow me to my home. Probably not. I have to tell you really quickly my favorite personalized license plate story because it cracks me up. My dear friend, Tina Mitchell Wilkins, country singer who lives in Texas. She used to live in LA, and we were roommates. She was my first roommate ever. And we were walking one day, and there was a personalized license plate. And she went, "Oh, look, Julie, how sweet is that?" And it was a license plate. And she said, "Rob." And she did a kiss.
Okay.
Like she thought it said, like somebody had a boyfriend named Rob and she was kissing him.
Okay.
And I looked at it and I said, "Tina, that says aerobics. AROBX. I have never let her forget that. It made me so happy.
there are a lot of them that you can't really tell what they are. Like you're sitting behind them at a stoplight and going, what does that say? Is it this or is it that?
It is my family's favorite thing. We have a family text chain just with the four of us. And our duty is every time we see a good license plate, we take a picture of it and send it and add it to the thing for everybody. And we all vote on it. It's fun. Oh, a friend of the show, Cory Goodrich, who was another epic Odyssey person. She is a musical theater, our fellow musical theater geek from Chicago, and she's a singer-songwriter as well. And she is doing her one-woman show called The Music of Folk Song, A Ballad of Death, Discovery, and DNA, because she was a late-in-life Discovery NPE. And if you go back to her episode, I don't remember what it is, but you can find it. You can hear the story. But she's doing her one-woman show in Chicago on October 2nd and 3rd at Venus Cabaret at Southport, on Southport Avenue in Chicago. But the other reason I mentioned it is there's a quote from it that I love that so spoke to me as an adoptee. And it says, "If a family tree falls in the woods and no one is around to see it, do I even exist?" I was like, wow, yes,
that's
it's
great.
that thing, that question of existence with no proof that trips us up a lot as adoptees.
I love that she has taken her story and written a show about it, and she can share that story with her art. I think that's wonderful.
Yes, me too. She's also a wonderful painter. Her biological father was a painter, and she has since taken up painting that she had never done before. And she paints the most beautiful art.
Oh, that's neat.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
I love making art out of life.
Yeah.
I found something that is happening in England. A project is underway to tackle the Herculean task of digitally mapping every grave in the Church of England's 19,000 graveyards.
Oh my God, that is
How
huge.
cool is that?
It's huge.
Yeah, so it'll be an online resource which will allow users to see the exact location of a burial plot, as well as photographs of the headstone and, where possible, the burial record from the church's archives.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
It's going to be an invaluable tool for historians, genealogists, or anyone who wants to know where their ancestors are laid to rest. It's funded by Historic England, the National Lottery Heritage Fund, and 2 genealogy websites. And they hope to complete it in, how long do you think it'll take to complete?
I was just going to ask you. I have no idea. I mean, that just sounds incredibly large and difficult.
Herculean, one might say.
Yes.
So they hope to complete the survey in 7 years.
Wow.
So here's how they do it. The researchers visit the graveyards wearing high-tech backpacks. Inside are 2 laser scanners, 5 cameras, and GPS tracking sensors. As they walk among the tombstones, millions of measurements are taken to map the exact locations of the graveyards. The graveyards are then revisited for the headstones and mausoleums to be photographed, and then images of the burial records.
To me, it just seems overwhelming because I get overwhelmed very easily.
And I as well.
But, considering that Google was able to map out every single, street in the world, pretty much, it's kind of if they can do that, they can certainly find, 20,000 graves. Exactly. And what's great is that all of so much we hear about records being lost in fires and floods and what have you. And now everything is going to be digital and they're going to be safe forever. That's invaluable. I love it. I think we should take a break on that great news. Let's do that. If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. Or consider supporting us on our Patreon page, patreon.com/CutOff Jeans Podcast. Now back to Julie and me. Richard, you sent me a link to a very interesting article this week. Yes, I did. I thought it was perfectly suited to discussion on our podcast, and I thought our listeners might be interested if they haven't already read it. It was in The Atlantic.
Correct, by Joshua Prager, who has been writing about this for many years.
And it was called The Roe Baby. And it was very timely because of what's going on in Texas and, Roe versus Wade. So this is actually the baby that was born of the woman who filed in the case of Roe versus Wade back in 1971, 72?
Yes, 1970.
70.
She filed suit in March of 1970, challenging the Texas laws that prohibited abortion, and she won the case. However, the decision was not handed down until January 22nd, 1973, and she had long since given birth and relinquished that child for adoption.
And see, I never knew that. When you hear about Roe versus Wade, I just assumed since Roe prevailed and abortion was legal in the country that she went ahead and had her abortion. But no,
right.
So there is a baby who was born. They call her the Roe baby, and this is what this article is about. What I found fascinating about it was that if you take away the politics of it and the politics of abortion, and you just strip it down to its essence, it is a story about a birth mother and an adoptee and their relationship or lack thereof. And because people sought out this Roe baby years later. And the story in the article talks about how Jane Roe, tell me her name, Norma
McCorvey.
Tried to find the baby, but only because she wanted to make money off of the baby.
She was guided at several different times in her life by several different factions of people with their own agendas.
Yes.
And she found that she really needed attention of sorts to basically, I think, to financially fulfill her.
Yes.
Because she had a tough life, and she made some really strange choices, and that is not to diminish the fact that the case is named after her and the law is named after her is not insignificant. But she wasn't perfect.
No.
And so she was many times at different times in her life. She was a pro-choice advocate. For a while, she was born again Christian and was a pro-life advocate and was.
She was inconsistent.
She was inconsistent.
Yes.
She was a lesbian. Essentially,
yes.
And that's there's a documentary, 2020 documentary about her called AKA Jane Roe that is very interesting, and it follows her entire life right up into her death. It's just incredibly complicated, but ultimately the people that had influence over her thinking, and for her, I think it was a survival thing.
There were a lot of interests and conflicting interests that wanted to use her as a mouthpiece, either pro-choice or pro-life, and I think she wasn't the best test case for this kind of a scenario.
Right.
I don't think she had strong convictions one way or the other.
By the way, she had 2 previous children that she'd given up for adoption.
Right. And this article talks about how the Roe baby found her sisters, right?
Yes. Ultimately, she connected with her sisters, one of whom had been adopted by her grandmother, by Jane Roe's mother, and then the other had been adopted out.
Yeah.
And they all had different levels of connection to Norma. But they had each other, which I think is the best possible scenario.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, one thing that we've talked about many times on this podcast is that that feeling when you're an adoptee, when you go for a search for your birth parents, like that fear of oh my God, are they going to be a serial killer, or are they going to be this, or maybe even is my birth mother famous, right? Like a star. Yeah. Like, remember, did Barbara Streisand have an illegitimate child, and that's me, So I think there's always that.
One could hope.
Well, that was my
sure.
hope, and it could have happened.
Oh, you are definitely your mother's son, by the way.
I know that. But what I'm saying is that, so here is a child who is adoptee. She was the subject of a very important legal case. Mm-hmm. All of the politics that revolve around that, and in addition to the fact of just the personal issues of being an adoptee and trying to learn who your mother is.
Yeah,
it's amazing to me.
Well, and the first time she was approached was by the National Enquirer.
Yeah.
And she had been they had hired the investigator that had found Roseanne Barr's daughter that she'd given up for adoption.
Yes, that's right.
And they hired her, and she was so excited when she found her that she flew herself to Seattle and confronted her in person and said, "Look, I'm an adoption investigator, and I know who your mother was." And she didn't say who she was, but she said she's famous, but not because she's an actress or a star.
Right.
But was that vague, and arranged for a meeting with her adoptive mother to come with her, and they laid it on her at this meeting.
Yeah. Ugh.
And after she got over the shock, they immediately said, "We have to know: are you pro-choice or pro-life?"
Oh my God!
Because
how old was she at this time? She was
20.
Yeah.
I think she was 19 or 20.
Oh goodness!
Yeah, that is I mean, when I was 19 or 20, I had very different views on it, mainly because of what I was told as an adoptee I should believe.
Right.
And you change as years. Obviously, my feelings about it have changed dramatically. And I've mentioned before that that adoptees don't want to be the poster child for a cause that peripherally may have something to do with their circumstances.
Right.
Or can be used. And I'm sure that if you're an adoptee that supports the pro-life movement, that you will certainly side it that way. But I dare say that all adoptees have all different feelings about the argument, and the fact that they're adopted doesn't come into it.
Yes. Very well put.
Thank you.
Here's another thing I thought of when I was reading this article. And of course, I always filter everything through what I've learned on this podcast from you and from all of our listeners and the people that have come on and told their stories is that so many birth families are worried that when this adoptee, the person they've given up for adoption, shows up in their life, they're there to collect money, right? Like they're there to say, to claim inheritance, right?
Yeah, but that is generally more on the paternal side.
Yeah. But still, in this case, it is actually the reverse, because when Norma McCorvey used the National Enquirer to find her birth daughter, she was actually trying to get paid. And so it was the opposite, whereas the birth parent was searching her out for financial gain as opposed to the opposite.
Yeah, that is interesting.
It's hard enough I would imagine, to go through this whole process of discovery without having it publicized in the National Enquirer.
Oh, and at such a young age. And in the National Enquirer, which isn't, a badge of honor. And
in such a politically charged atmosphere as well.
Exactly. So... good talk.
Yeah, I mean, I highly recommend anybody to just Google search.
It's called The Row Baby.
And it's on The Atlantic.
It's really a beautifully written article, and tackles all sides of the equation, and highlights what a complicated person Norma McCorvey was, and the impact that it had on her children, and where they are now.
Yeah. And, you can always watch that documentary that Julie mentioned. And also, there's a really good movie called Citizen Ruth that was an Alexander Payne film with Laura Dern that is sort of about the same thing. And they don't say that it's the Row Baby, but it's about a young woman, conflicted woman who's pregnant, who doesn't want to have the baby, and she's not the greatest poster child for either side, and both sides try to co-opt her, and it's based on this.
It's basically the same story.
And it's a satire, and it's really biting and funny.
Oh, I'd forgotten about that movie.
Yeah, I mean, I'll watch anything with Laura Dern. She's amazing.
Yes, she's to die.
So anyway, go check out the article or check out the documentary or Citizen Ruth, and we will be back shortly.
All right.
Thank you for listening to Cut Off Genes with Julie Dixon Jackson and Richard Castle. You can support us by going to patreon.com/Cut Off Genes podcast. Now, back to the program.
Okay, it is time for part 2 of my conversation with Brian Stanton, the writer, actor, director of At Ghost Kingdom. So this is the second part of our conversation, which goes beyond the end of the film, essentially. So there are spoilers, but we had such a great conversation. He's so insightful. I find that adoptees that are also creatives are the best people to talk to for me.
I would agree, Julie, considering I'm talking to an adoptee who's creative.
There you go.
You made a whole podcast out of it.
I did indeed, and I honor others who also do that. So this is part 2 of my conversation with Brian. When we left off, he had discovered that the man who he called Max in the movie, I think, who was in prison, who had sent him fingernails and blood, was not his biological father, and he was back to square one. So this is what happens after that.
Great, let's listen in.
Yeah, that was the end. I mean, that marked a certain end to a chapter of everything that we thought we knew. My birth mother and I thought we knew.
Right.
It just wasn't.
Yeah.
Now, what happened? There's another guy who was involved, passed. Sadly, in the early 90s, just a tragic accident. So I had no way of getting in touch with him personally, but I did find family members, and they wanted nothing to do with me. A couple of them did talk to me initially, and then disappeared.
Yeah.
And then my birth mother also put me in touch with a man who originally, now this is where it can get confusing, Julie, so just ask me questions if clarification. Originally, when my birth mother discovered she was pregnant, she was dating a guy. When you're not expecting to be pregnant, you don't find out till you're at least 3 months. I mean, most of the time, right?
Yes.
So,
planning it, right.
Yeah, exactly. Especially at 16 years old.
Yeah.
So, she was dating a guy, and they just assumed it was his. I just called me it. That was crazy. They just assumed I was his.
Yeah.
And so her family literally took him into a Catholic church,
Right.
to sign away all rights to me. And he had to vow to never seek me out and search me out.
In a Catholic church.
Yes. So now, I had never heard this story. I heard this from him because she got back in touch with him when she found out that Max was not my father.
Okay.
Said, maybe you are this guy's.
Mm-hmm.
We'll call him. What did I call him in the movie? Oh my gosh. I called him and I said, hi, I hear I may be your son. And he was elated. Mm-hmm. He was so excited. He had thought that I was his son all these years, and he's been waiting for me to call. He's been waiting these past, however old I was, 35 years at the time, waiting for me. He told his whole family about me. He told his daughters about me.
Huh.
I was a ghost to him. I will get into this whole ghost kingdom thing, but like, I couldn't believe it. And my heart was both breaking because I was pretty darn sure I was not his.
Oh, you were? Just
because of the timing.
Right.
And my birth mother initially thought I was his.
Right.
Because, but then when the due date came, she's like, oh no, he's from this.
Right.
Yeah. So it was just the timing, the 9-month timing did not work out for him.
So he's down. He's down to take the test.
Yes,
yeah,
totally.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. And then even though I was pretty sure I wasn't his, I began lying to myself. Like maybe I could be his. Like how exciting would this be? I mean, this is amazing. He's,
it would literally be tying a bow on the whole thing. Yeah.
Oh, he literally said, we have these large family dinners all the time. We host them at our house. You have a chair at our dinner table. I mean, this is what we all hope for any reunion.
This is the fairy tale. Yes.
This is the fairy tale validation. I mean, just perfect. Anyway.
Right.
I mean, I wasn't his. We did the test, and I was not his, 0%. So then I start trying to pursue, as I said previously, this man who passed away. And as I said, his family didn't want to have anything to do with me.
Right. And that is pretty much the end of the film, right? As far as,
yes.
I mean, yeah, you come to your own conclusion.
Correct. So
yeah.
I don't know that he was my father. I don't know that he's my father or not, but I was so emotionally exhausted, and I had to find a strength within to move forward with. Maybe I won't know, or maybe I'll just know later in my life. But I do have a family now. I am a father now. And no matter what happens, Julie, the fact that I made the decision to search is very empowering anyway, because then when we decide to search, we take a power into our own hands. It's like we go back to the womb and try to find our inner baby and touch it, try to, fill that empty space, or just try to hold ourselves, try to nurture ourselves.
Yeah. In a lot of your monologues that, by the way, so something we haven't talked about is that basically this film that you shot during COVID, you and your wife, is a series of monologues, and you're playing all the roles.
Correct.
So great.
Correct.
So great.
Thank you. And I see it more as, and I, whatever comes across in the film is fine, but I see it more as I gave myself an alias, Braden. It's Braden's fantasy of who these people are, and it is Braden trying to take on the voice and the everything, just so that we humanize these people that we don't know who they're shadows, and we try to humanize them as much as possible, because, as you know, we have these fantasies our whole life of who our biological relatives are, who our ancestors are. And I just, so that's what all that is. Yes, I do. It's just me. Yeah.
And that's what Ghost Kingdom is too.
Correct.
By the way, it's
correct.
Because we have everybody, our past is a series of ghosts. We don't, going back to what I was saying about some of your monologues is that, and I don't know if you call them monologues, but some of them could be used as a monologue in a play.
Absolutely.
And
there's soliloquy.
Yes, soliloquy. There you go. Hold the skull and talk. The way I describe it has been, once again, making about me,
awesome.
Is feeling connected to the earth. For me, I never felt. I mean, the standard trope is, I didn't fit in anywhere. But it's more than that. It's that you don't feel a connection to the earth. You're not rooted in anything. And you literally, for me, I literally kind of felt like I was in limbo and floating. And not grounded at all, just because I had no history. And
that's so well put, Julie. Perfect.
Yeah,
yes.
It was so hard for me and it was very difficult for me to explain it to other people until I started talking to other adoptees about it and to validate it for me. And really, it's only adoptees that get it.
No, get it at least viscerally and emotionally, exactly. Like we really like what we're trying to describe. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
It is like we're floating around.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, all these online ancestry things, everybody uses a tree image for families, right?
Yes.
And trees have roots.
Yep.
You're grounded in your roots, and it feels like in order for us, and I love how you said connected to the earth, in order for us to kind of, sometimes I feel this way, in order for us to move on and move forward with the essence of who we are, we need to go backwards.
Yes.
We need to go back to our ancestors, to the womb, to the,
We need proof for ourselves that we're here for a reason, because other people lived before us. Otherwise, we're essentially aliens.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, for me, that's why I love doing genealogy so much now, because
sure.
I can go back to 200-300 years, and this guy who was born in 1775 and ran a pub at the Tunnel End in Yorkshire is my 3 times great grandfather, and he is one of the reasons I'm here. And
yes.
I can literally go and walk in his footsteps. And that, for me, even though it sounds, you're either into genealogy or you're not, for me, that is so meaningful, and just so it literally makes me feel 3-dimensional.
Oh, this is beautiful. And I listened to that episode, Julie, and that was fascinating.
Which one?
The one where you spoke about your great great grandfather with the newspaper clipping.
Oh, the German one.
Is that what you're referring to?
No, that's not the one I was referring to.
My gosh.
You'd be surprised at how many third great grandfathers we have.
No, you're right.
Yes, this is my one in Yorkshire. That was my German one who lived in Bendigo that ran an Papa.
Oh, that's right.
I have lots of pub owners in my heritage. I've discovered.
Fantastic.
Yeah, which totally tracks.
It explains a lot. Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
Really
I find out I'm a lot more Irish than I thought, so that explains my tolerance.
Yes. Exactly. Yes, I am German and British and Scottish and Irish. So yeah, it all makes sense.
Perfect. Perfect.
So let me see where.
Yeah, you said a lot there that I wanted to unpack something. Okay. You were talking about. We're talking about why we search and all that stuff. There is a double standard because Ancestry is, it's so popular right now, right? And we have all these sites.
Yeah.
And they even have television shows about people finding out who they're related to. And it's so wonderful. But then why are we not allowed to search? Why is it such a taboo that we search our ancestors?
Right.
Yes.
No, celebrities can, because it makes for good TV. But also, and they do have a lot of adoptee shows, but they don't show the bad side of, they don't show, everything is, rainbows and sunshine.
That's what At Ghost Kingdom is about. It's trying to make sense of the search. And my journey in particular, it's trying to make sense of what all that meant, what those years meant, and that amazing relationship I had with Keely. All of it. Once we found out I was not related, boom, she's gone.
Yeah.
And we had this amazing relationship. What does all that mean? And that's what I try to explore in At Ghost Kingdom.
Yes.
Is what this means and why we search. And I don't pretend to have any answers. I'm just, all these musings of this journey and what just happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's life-changing. Okay, so the film finished, and at the end of the film, you were you basically had started doing Ancestry and 23andMe, and you had a series of messages, people actually responding to you, which is in some ways surprising. But, people do, but in a very small percentage.
Right.
And then it ended. And so my first thing was, well, wait, so what happened? And so I immediately texted you and said, hey, so did you find your, and I was thinking, I was like, oh my God, I can finish his story for him, because that's what I do. And so if you hadn't found your father, I would have been like, let me see your DNA. I'm gonna do this for you right now.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much.
But so you did tell me, do you want to talk about this?
Yes, sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So tell me what happened after.
I went ahead and did them all.
Yeah.
Julie, I did Ancestry.com, 23andMe, Family Tree DNA, Heritage.com, Family Search, all of them. My Heritage. Yes. Thank you. Make sure I get those right.
Yeah.
And, it was years of barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah.
It was, there were some angels that were helping me, but we latched on to the wrong surname that we just coincidentally had in common. I got to a point, Julie, where I was like, I can't call or email people directly right now anymore. I was so emotionally exhausted. Yep. I'm just going to do this, and whatever comes up, great. So I'll make a longer story longer. So a couple of years ago, this wonderful woman is married to a guy. Okay, Julie, this is where I gotta get my head straight because I don't want to. This is where it gets really confusing. A name kept popping up.
Okay.
That was my closest relative.
Okay. That was a DNA match?
Yes, and it was coming up as first cousin.
Okay. That's a good
So
match.
I'm like, awesome.
Yep.
What is this? So I shoot a message out and I get a response right away by an amazing woman. She is actually the wife of my first cousin.
Okay.
She runs the whole DNA site. So we just start working. We talk, once every month or so and just try to dig deep on like, how are we related? And I'm going to be brief because it's just going to get too convoluted. So we were trying to find the connection to Kansas City because I was born in Kansas City at this time. And so let's see, about a year and a half ago, what we discovered was the man who would most likely be my grandfather, who is the father of her husband, moved to a suburb outside of Kansas City in the late 50s, mid to late 50s, and was working for a certain car company. He had an affair with a woman who was working with that same car company. Mm-hmm. That woman got pregnant, had a son. Right. And she's like, Brian, we think that son is your father.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Yes. And so I was like, oh my God, that baby was probably put up for adoption. I'm never going to find him then. Never. Yeah. And she gave me a name that their family thought was the name of this son. Because their family all knew about the boy. All of them. Oh. They all knew about the boy. They're like, we have another brother out there, So my uncle is like, we have another brother out there, all that. So I used the name and was searching. And once again, Julie, I was going down rabbit holes and all this stuff. And it turned out it was the wrong name.
Okay.
So then these other names, these Irish names started popping up on 23andMe. And I'm like, whoa, these are first cousins too, and second cousins. Like, it was like a slew of them did it at the same time.
Uh-huh.
But I was like, so I reached out to another person who I had been in touch with, and I said, hey, these names are connected to you. Who are they? And they said, oh, Brian, this is another angel who was helping me out. Those are my cousins. So it looks like we are related to your father's side.
Okay.
And so I just started putting things together. And I found a name that was in Kansas City of a woman. I researched her, and she had passed, sadly, but she would be in the line that would be my grandmother.
Yep.
Okay? Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking maybe this is the woman that had the affair. I don't know. Mm-hmm. And so she had 4 living children, a son and 3 daughters. And I connected them all through Facebook to confirm, and then I just sent out Facebook messages. But they're of the older generation, and if we're not friends, I don't know if they know how to get those messages.
Right. I don't know what message request means.
Right. So, but the son did have a website and an email. Okay. So I was like, screw it, I'm going to do it. And I sent the email out, and I said, introduced myself, all that. And I said, we may be related somehow. I don't know if you have another half brother out there, all that stuff. He contacts me right away and said, I'm more than happy to help out. Why don't you tell me about who your birth mother is, and we'll go from there. So I told him about my birth mother. We went to this high school. I was conceived around this time, late April, early May of 1974. I was born in February of 1975. Thank you. Thanks for your help. Wow. And he responded, and he said, I knew your mother. We went on a double blind date, late April, early May. I'm happy to take a DNA test with you.
Wait, that's amazing.
Yes.
Okay.
So actually the DNA match that I had would be my grandmother's, like nieces and nephews and sisters. Yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So I fell out of my chair. I was like, no way.
Yeah.
What? And I just knew. I knew that was my father right away.
Wow.
I just knew it.
Wow.
He was so gracious. We did the DNA test, came back 99.99999%. And before I had gotten the results, I said, would you mind if I called you? Mm-hmm. Because I would rather this be personal. I've spent too much time online. He said, absolutely. If it turns out negative, I'm more than happy to be a sounding board for you because it sounds like you've gone through a lot. Mm-hmm. And he said, if it turns out positive, we obviously have a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
Turned out positive.
Yay.
I called him, and the first thing he said was, well, I love you and I'm proud of you.
Oh. We have a bow anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And how long ago was that?
That was April of last year.
Oh.
During COVID.
Oh, it was during COVID?
Yep. He flew out last May, at the end of May, and he lives in Houston, Texas. And he flew out, and we spent 2 full 48 hours together. It was fantastic. He got to meet, I have 2 daughters. Mm-hmm. He got to meet his new grandchildren. He's very involved. We text each other probably weekly. I have a half sister who is involved in theater.
Yay!
Apparently his mother, my grandmother, was a singer. Now I can't sing. I didn't get those genes.
Okay.
Singing never leaves the shower or car.
Yeah.
But there were performers, and she was on track to be a professional singer, and then got tuberculosis, and her whole life changed.
Oh dear. Okay.
But my half sister, I think she lives in New York, and she was involved in musical theater, and now works for a theater company.
That's so cool.
And I have a half brother as well, so it's very exciting.
Yeah.
And we are in that honeymoon period, and but now that I am more educated and I understand more emotionally about all this, this reunion has been a lot more honest.
Yeah.
And a lot more productive right away, I think. And it's just been different. And I really wish I had that with my birth mother. He didn't know that his mother had an affair.
Wait.
And he didn't know I existed, and he did not know his mother had an affair.
Wait, who he? Your father?
My father.
Oh, so he was.
He was the product of the affair. Yes. Oh. And I had never heard that term until I.
So he was raised. This is happening so much. So he was raised by his biological mother, but he didn't know that the father that raised him wasn't his father either.
Correct.
That has happened so much to me in the last year with clients. Here's what's complicated about it. I figure it out, but it's a lot of extra work. But then I have this whole thing of, well, should I tell them that they're an NPE? Because they probably don't even know. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing that I even found them. But there's that whole other layer of, well, guess what? Not only do you have, has this child come back looking for you, but your father isn't also who you thought he was. I don't talk to them directly about that. The client knows, and I leave it up to them as to whether or not they
Right. As you should. Yeah, sure.
So it's at Ghost Kingdom. How can people see it? When can they see it? When are you doing screenings?
Okay, so here's what we have so far. First of all, you can always go to my website it's spelled AT, ghostkingdom.com.
Good to know.
You can follow me on Facebook. You can follow at Ghost Kingdom on Facebook as well. And I have an Instagram at Ghost Kingdom _film. Great. So there'll always be announcements coming. the Concerned United Birth Parents Conference out here in Marina del Rey.
Oh, yes. There's another screening of something there, too.
Yeah, Rebecca, the Primal Wound, Reckoning with the Primal Wound is showing.
Yes, that is showing there, too. I just talked about that last week, I think.
Fantastic. Yeah. Yep. I'm excited to see that, too. So that one I can plug both of them. That one goes Friday night, probably around 8:00.
Okay.
And then at Ghost Kingdom will be Saturday night around 8:00. And this is the Concerned United Birth Parents retreat. So you guys can all look that up. This is October 22nd and 23rd.
Okay.
And then there's other things in the works that I can't fully reveal yet,
sure.
As nothing is fully set in stone, and also waiting on just announcements.
Yep.
So follow me on Insta or Facebook and await some announcements. I appreciate it.
Gosh, Brian, thank you so much. All right. Thank you so much, Brian, for that conversation.
Thank you, Brian.
By the way, the first public screening of At Ghost Kingdom will be in Venice, California at the Electric Lodge on September 25th. Doors open at 7 p.m. The screening and a Q&A to follow is at 8 p.m. And you can get tickets on eventbrite.com.
That sounds great.
Yeah, and go to the At Ghost Kingdom website and also Facebook page to find out about other screenings and what have you.
Until next time, I am, maybe even next time I still will be, Richard Castle, and you can follow me on the Twitter at Castle Songs, also on Instagram at Castle Songs, or you could go to my website, richardcastle.com.
Julie Dixon Jackson, you can find me on the Twitter at joolsjackson with 2 O's. Find the podcast on Twitter at CutOff Jeans Pod. Join the Facebook group. If you're a Patreon member, join the private patron Facebook group. Follow me on Instagram, CutOff Jeans Podcast. And I am Jules Jackson on TikTok, still learning how to participate.
It's a learning curve.
It is, as is everything. And as always, the truth is in your jeans.